Viewers, this is Qamar Cheema, and today's episode we are doing in English. And I have with me Mr. Somet Peer Bhai, who's always smiling, and he's a wonderful political commentator, and he's always shining and speaking with arguments at the Indian media. Thank you very much, Somet Peer Bhai, for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Cheema. Thank you very much for the invitation, sir. Much appreciated.
Thank you. So, Somet Bhai, today's topic is very much important, and I really wanted to understand that the Foreign Minister Ajay Shankar is visiting Sri Lanka and Maldives from 26th to 30th March. Now, there is a serious question to understand that do you really believe India is worried because Chinese are putting a lot of money in Sri Lanka, Chinese are putting a lot of money in Maldives, China is engaged in all these African countries. So, and India is a major member of the Quad. So, why Indian government is putting a lot of political and diplomatic capital into its backyard? Is it China's fear, or do you think that this is India's belief that they need to invest more and they need to engage more in its regional partners?
Well, Mr. Cheema, thank you very much for the question. Let me start with Sri Lanka. The relations with Sri Lanka go back to 2,500 years. So this is not started yesterday. So this relations goes to when the PRC, People's Republic of China, was not even a concept. So let's not see relations in that perspective. Now, coming to Maldives, we also have our relations going to hundreds of years, so there's no doubt around that. Now, in geopolitics, nothing is permanent, nothing is static. There are no permanent friends, there are no permanent enemies. The things change with time. The change with the change of government, the things change with the change of God. And that is precisely what has been happening here. We all know, and we cannot deny a fact called Chinese string of pearls, which is to encircle India, and which is China's work in progress. And we are doing in what is in our command and what is in our interest to safeguard our interest and to kind of counterbalance that. Now, in this whole scheme of things, there are two important neighbors. One is Sri Lanka and one is Maldives. Now, incidentally, let's talk to Sri Lanka first. Now, Sri Lanka, if you look at the GDP of $80 billion, a lot comes from tourism. And the 60% of the foreign exchange comes from tourism. Now, you see, for last so many years, the tourism has been hit because of COVID-19. So the economy is in shambles. Now, Mr. Cheema, you will also recall that the Chinese very smartly took over the Hambantota port. Where Sri Lankans could not pay the debt, they took out the Hambantota port. So it was from a 45 years lease, it was more than 99 years. And now there was a news which I did a debate on the national TV, incidentally, Mr. Cheema, that the Chinese PLA soldiers wearing PLA uniform are seen in Hambantota port. Now I was asked by the Indian media, what do you see there? I was very clear that Chinese are making their mark. We have taken your territory, though they could have still sent their men without uniform, but they choose to send their men with uniform to make a mark that, okay, this port belongs to us. 99 years in geopolitics is a long time. Literally, the port is given to China. Now, there was one more, this Rajpaksa, I forget the name, Rajpaksa International Airport in Matata or somewhere. I can't remember the name properly. Now, again, we were supposed to develop that. That project was stalled by the government of Sri Lanka. Now, there was a problem with the Eastern Cargo Terminal, wherein Sri Lankans unilaterally pushed us and Japanese out and asked us to do a Western cargo terminal, which the Adani Group has already signed the MOU and they are developing the port, which will add to the Adani strings of ports which are on our coast of India. So we are doing that. We gave them a $400 million currency swap, right? So we have given them a 500,000 doses of COVID vaccine free of cost, right? We have helped Sri Lanka as and when we have, because even as from a Hinduism perspective, there's a relation with Sri Lanka from a religious perspective as well. So we have done our best to help the Sri Lanka, though there are some issues with vis-a-vis these fishermen issues is there. ECT moreover solved. ECT swapped with the Western Cargo Terminal moreover solved, and there is this UN Assembly votings on the Sri Lankan Tamil genocide and all. These are some perpetual issues which are continuing, but at times we voted for Sri Lanka. After that, we also abstained. So we are maintaining that balance. Now, today, the problem, Mr. Cheema, is that Sri Lanka is in a Chinese debt trap. The Sri Lankans have seen what has happened to, Tibet. Sri Lankans know what Chinese have been doing to do in Gwadar. Sri Lankans know what the Chinese have been doing in Eastern Mongolia, what they have done in Tajikistan, what they have done everywhere else, right? So it's not an open secret at all. Now, Sri Lankans have to be very careful because the state they are in, Chinese look for three things, sir: land, ladies, and legitimacy. So when you get Chinese money, you have to trade off all the three. So if you don't want to trade all the three, it is still for time for you to balance your foreign policy. A pro-China foreign policy at debt at 6% per from a Chinese bank at 6% per annum is impossible to pay for an economy like Sri Lanka. The kind of shambles they are in, and Sri Lanka lately moved to a welfare state. That's a different issue altogether. But here, look at our bullet train project. We got that at 1% for 10 years. That is 0.1% per year. So if you are borrowing at 0.1% per year, and if you are borrowing at 6% per year, it's a hell of a difference for you to pick up. It's high time for Sri Lanka to really reconsider the factions. But I'll be very candid with you, Mr. Cheema. There has been a group of Sri Lankan politicians who are also interested in making their money. I don't want to take the names. We all know the names. They are open in the public. So they have made their coffers rich, and the currency of reserve of Sri Lanka, I think a few months back, fell to $2.5 billion, though we gave them a $400 million currency swap. We are doing everything to have the relation inbuilt. But if money and the political greed takes over or presides over the interests of the country, then let God be your savior. There's a limit we can do. We'll do our best because we're committed to the people of Sri Lanka. But beyond that, it's all up to the government and the people of Sri Lanka. How do they do it? Now let's move to Maldives. Now Maldives, again, 26% of the GDP. It's a very small GDP. It is around $5 million. 26% comes from tourism. Around 65 to 70% of foreign exchange comes from tourism only. Now we have seen in last COVID, the tourism is badly affected. Now, there has been a change in Maldives from 2013. After 2013, there's a pro-India government which has come into place. Before that, there was a pro-China government. We all know that. Now, the current president of Maldives has done a lot of things to mend the relations. We immediately gave them, when he took the office, we gave them a $1.4 billion financial assistance. Imagine a GDP of $5 billion and a $1.4 billion of financial assistance is a big for that kind of GDP. Now, we have given them COVID vaccines. At the peak of COVID, Mr. Cheema, we sent a ship with COVID vaccines, doctors, nurses, all the medical, a full ship to Maldives because they said we don't have doctors, we don't have oxygen, we don't have anything. We sent a full ship. Only country where we sent a full ship was Maldives. But having said that, the relations are good. We are giving them 2 attack helicopters. We're giving them a lot of things, and they have reciprocated back as well. Prime Minister Modi was given the highest civilian honor in Maldives after the new president, after the current regime. But as you know, that the current regime, it will be ending in 2023. So a change of guard might happen. The two principal opposition parties are pro-China. We all know that. There is nothing hidden about that. So when the things are changing, when the change of guard might happen. So we are proactive. We are getting our interests protected. We are their friends. They know we are our friends. And one more biggest contribution of India to Maldives is, Mr. Cheema, is that we have put Maldives on the global tourist map. How many Indian celebrities, how many photo shoots of Bollywood, and how many all have started happening in Maldives, because that helps Maldives to boost the flagship industry which they have is the tourism. So India is a committed friend. We have helped them always. And let me not recall you of the Operation Cactus, when we literally saved the anti-India, so-called anti-India Maldivian president from a coup. So though 18 Maldivians unfortunately got killed, now nobody from the Indian Army and Navy got killed, but we restored the government. So we have always shown our intent, which is positive, which is friendly, and they are our friends. We love them, we like them. The same is for Lankans. But at the same time, China is also playing its own games. Geopolitics, things change. We have to be on the vigil. We have to constantly manage our things and look for our interests. We are not competing with China because the relations with China might be of money. The relations with India are of heart and mind, people to people connect, are of friendship and trust.
Well, I understood what you were trying to make a case as far as Maldives and Sri Lanka is concerned. But there is one thing which we observed recently, that this at this Colombo Security Conclave, that India is trying to bypass and trying to completely dismantle this already established regional framework like SAARC. And now you are coming up with this Colombo Security Conclave. So how do you see that this is all that to isolate Pakistan? What we believe that there is an Indian approach, an Indian plan to isolate Pakistan. Okay, let's not engage take all these SAARC countries, regional countries into the SAARC. Let's make our own regional bloc here. And just mentioning the Sagar, what we call that the security and growth for all in the region. Sagar is basically, I think, a Hindi word which means ocean or the sea. and the Prime Minister Modi is also coming up that what we need to do is that we have to grow and we have to we need to provide a security for all in the region. So how do you find all these two things which I mentioned? So this is in India's hell-bent stance to leave Pakistan aside and engage only in Indo-Pacific. Take Maldives, Sri Lanka, Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh, then Maldives, Sri Lanka, and then African countries, and then stay away. Keep Pakistan away from all these countries so that India can keep its control and its hegemonic ambitions in its distant neighbors and near neighbors.
Well, Mr. Chima, when you look at the diplomacy, everybody looks at his interest. And if whatever India is doing, I mean, Pakistan is free to do whatever they want to do in their interest. So, is it's not either or. It's not we are blocking you or we are stopping Pakistan. We are doing what we think is best in our interest. Now, if you look at the Sagar, that security for all and all, there are economic zones, what we call as economic zones. When in the maritime waters, there has been a dispute between India and Sri Lanka, but we resolved in 1976 itself. Right, so there have been a few bones of contention. Still, the fisherman issue is on. Fisherman's caught this side and that side. So there are some small little issues which keep on cropping up. But our main idea is to strengthen our relations with our neighborhood. As I mentioned to you earlier, there is a string of pearls which China is building, and we all know what it is. But there's no denial of that. So China will do whatever they think is in their interest. We'll do whatever we think is in our interest. Now, for Pakistan to think that India is blocking them, India is trying to make a new alliances and all, that is a subject of mind. That is a state of mind, because who stops Pakistan today from making another SAARC or another whatever alliance you want to make? Like, we have a multi-layered defense shield. We have multiple level agreements, and we are not only depending on a cord, or we are not only depending on one line. So these multiple layer alliances and what we call as these arrangements in geopolitics, or the strategic alliances in geopolitics, which change from time to time. And as the geopolitics will change, these alliances have to be counterbalanced. New initiatives have to be brought in. The old and outdated initiatives have to go down the drain. And incidentally, it is very oxymoronic when we talk of Pakistan talking to us. Look, we will oppose when we want to have a summit on terrorism. And you say, okay, Pakistan is a part of that. When you have launch pads on, when you have terrorists on, it doesn't make sense. Let's not kind of demean the whole thing. If you think terrorism is your state policy, you live with it, no problem. We'll do what we have to do to protect our interests. And incidentally, Mr. Chima, now even the current day Prime Minister, as on 27th of March 2022, Mr. Imran Khan Niazi is also of the view that the Pakistan foreign policy needs to change. So the foreign policy cannot be around India. The foreign policy cannot be. You must have an independent foreign policy. You make friends with whomever you have. We are friends with Saudis. We are friends with UAE. We are also friends with Maldives. We are also friends with Sinhalese. So there have been bones of contention. There are some tricky issues which we manage and maneuver. There are compulsions of domestic politics as well, vis-a-vis Tamil Nadu, but we have been able to manage that. So when we look at a national interest, sir, and national interest is a country as such, regional, local interests take a kind of a level 2 or a layer 2 priority. The national interest, the collective interest of the nation as such, takes the first priority. That is what India's foreign policy has been. It is not, let me clarify you, sir, it is not around Pakistan. It is not around one country. We will do what we think works best for our future generations and in the best interest of the country. Now, Pakistan, China, or anybody else is at its liberty, free will. It's a free world. They can do whatever they want. They can make any alliances they want. You had a YC meeting recently. YC doesn't come to India. So it's okay. Let them be in Pakistan. We're okay with them. But some of them come to Kashmir and do a $5 billion investment. That's a different issue. But our policy is not around Pakistan. Neither our policies around China. We run our own independent policy depending on what works in our interest. Now it's for our neighbors and the counterparts to see what works in their best interest, and should they have a policy which is encircled around India. I can't hear you, sir.
Yeah, one thing you mentioned, Sumit Bhai, that terrorism is Pakistan's policy. So what we have been saying, I can go and on and can simply say that terrorism is an India's policy. We got Kulbhushan Yadav, we got what he was doing in Balochistan, and then what has been happening from Afghanistan into Pakistan. We understand that. We gave the dossiers to the international community. You have been making the case as well as to the in front of international community. So Pakistan and India have both been doing the same. So this blame game is going. You are calling us, and we are calling you. But I think the move which is coming from India, that is more important to understand. That is engage diplomatically, economically, politically, make new multilateral forums in the Indo-Pacific, and keep this SAARC completely dysfunctional, so that that will be mainstreaming Pakistan. So never let Pakistan get mainstream, because Pakistan is in a difficult situation because of the security, economy. So that is a very clear Indian policy of isolating Pakistan. And you are absolutely right. I agree with you when you said that, oh, this is our policy. You have a right to make your own alliances. You have a right to make your own blocks. And I agree with you that India is strategically in a better position where the international order is moving. Rather in Indo-Pacific, we are in a position where the international order didn't help us to have growth because of Central Asia and all that. So one final question that is very much important for me to understand, that do you ever believe that let me put it the new political context, what's going on in Pakistan, because they cannot, we have to have a tadka for our conversation. Do you believe that with the changes in Pakistan, if there is a new prime minister who comes in, there will be a change of mind in India that we have to engage? Or do you think, or do you believe that no, whatever the Prime Minister Modi has taken a stance that we should not engage with Pakistan, that policy will continue, and you will stay yourself and keep yourself engaged in this look east policy or engage east policy, ye jo aapki, that is look east policy. So you will keep doing that, and or do you think that there will be some sort of a change?
Okay, Cheema sir, there is 1.25 questions I need to answer. So let me come to point 25 first. That's easier than we move to your last question. Vis-a-vis the terrorism, you see, you have named one Kulbhushan Yadav who was abducted from Iran. Okay, for the sake of argument, even in all those last 30 years, you could find one Kulbhushan Yadav, and you are naming one Kulbhushan Yadav. If I start naming the names, this whole conversation will end. And they're UN designated terrorists in your territory, they're American designated terrorists in your territory, and they're people with $10 million bounty. And for the sake of argument, even if for the sake of argument, I agree for once that Kulbhushan Yadav is a terrorist and he has whacked the whole Pakistan. Sir, won't it be oxymoronic to think how can a one person whack the complete defense system of Pakistan? Is that man so strong? Is that a Hulk? Is a reincarnation of the Hulk or the Iron Man? Or I mean, who is Kulbhushan Yadav that who could whack through the entire defenses of Pakistan? Then you have to really look into your defense strategy, which has to be the utmost point of attention. If one person can whack through every system and turn your Balochistan around, then there is something drastically wrong in your defense system. So the argument doesn't hold ground. Let me come to your second question, sir, because this is Mr. Cheema is absolute logic and mathematics. I'm not talking about rhetoric here. I'm not talking about my what a perception or hypothesis here. Now answering your second question. Now you see, what I always believe, and as a political commentator, I believe that the intentions have to be seen on the ground. There was one document which was recently released wherein they said, okay, for next 100 years, we'll have peace with India. Now, we had a discussion with you or somebody in the Pakistan media. I said, look, the document is released by Mr. Khan. I said, sir, will Mr. Khan be there after a year? Then you and me, we both laughed. And now we are just 3 months, 4 months down the line. We know what possibly is going to happen. Now, the intention, if the intention is on the ground, so a change of guard may not signify change. But the intention of the ground, if it is visible, it is tangible, it will signify the change. As far as the Indian setup goes, as far as the Honorable Prime Minister of India said that, look, as long as this terrorism and these guns and cannons are active, no peace can happen. The only problem is there are two things you have to watch on. One is you have to change your foreign policy. Second is these terrorists and all, they have become honestly a liability for Pakistan. I don't know who keeps them and why Pakistan wants to retain them. They are, you're swimming like with two sandbags tied to your legs, because that makes swimming almost impossible. You can prevent drowning, but you can hardly swim. You cannot race with two sandbags tied to your legs. If those sandbags are released, there's a change of guard and the intentions on the ground are visible, we are okay and open to looking at the revised scenarios. But the intention has to be visible. The things have to be explicit on the ground. We can hope and pray the newer regime will be better. But today, what they rightly said, hope for the peace, but keep your gunpowder dry.
Hmm. Let's see, but obviously, whenever the individuals operate in another country, they do not operate sing alone. They operate with the support of the minds behind those who are operating. And I think this India's strategy, as far as the Sagar is concerned, this is very much. India is playing very broadly into the region, and they have rightly. If I would be an Indian and I will look that strategy, that is a very important milestone, I think, in Indian foreign policy, the way they have engaged. And I think this is what we have been talking, that the more Pakistan understands India, the more it will be better to craft a new plan or to craft a new strategy, how to go for a more stronger regional cooperation between India and Pakistan, and overall or with all the countries, because forget India is engaged in Indo-Pacific, but at the end of the day, India needs all these partners in Iran and Central Asia and Russia and all that. So they have a significance as well. But anyhow, thank you very much, Sumit Pir Bhai. Yes, please.
Yeah, one last thing I want to mention here. Shiva Saab, you see, we need partners and we need our friends everywhere, and that is what the policy is. The only problem with the Pakistan is the 2 points I mentioned. If they are kind of worked out, things can better. Now, I want to mention one quickly about one project, that is the Sagar Mala project. Now, the Sagar Mala project is a very ambitious project. I'll give you some quick points on this. Now, the Indian exports today, which happen by the sea route, are 90%, right, by volume, and 70% by value. After the Sagar Mala today we are exporting around 1.5 billion tons of cargo from sea. We have 200 ports and 20 are major ports, 220 in all. So with the Sagar Mala, what are we doing is we are connecting through them through, this is why I'm talking about this is an important thing where the competition can be. We are connecting the waterways, we are building heavy duty rail corridors which can handle 3 times the freight in a same rail. Now after the Sagar Mala, and we are building expressways and all in that project, after the Sagar Mala project is kind of enhanced and work, which will be by 2026 or 28. So our export capability from ports will increase from 1.5 billion tons to 2.5 billion tons. Our exports will have a quantum jump of whatever we are doing, $200 billion. $200 billion from the current price will create 10 million jobs. And overall, the time and the money to transport it will be phenomenally low. So in that scheme of things, Maldives and Sri Lanka are going to be stakeholders. We are going to rope in them through, because when we look at outstation posts, that's why Adani is building a port in Sri Lanka. And we are looking to have the strategic ties with Maldives as well, because then India will be a routing hub. They will be our kind of outstation partners or ports in that bigger scheme of things. We can have a separate discussion on that. But this is a game changer project which will really revolutionize our cargo trade, our sea routes, cargo trade, and all these things. So Sri Lanka and Maldives will also commercially gain from this because they will be partners in this.
Yes, agree. I think the future lies in sea communication, and the future lies in this the cargoes which have to move this Indo-Pacific communication lanes. So obviously, for India being a strong maritime nation, and other countries who are in this all maritime region, I think it is going to be very much helpful. Thank you very much, Sumit Pirwai, for your time and for your valuable analysis.
Thank you. A pleasure to be with you on your show. Thank you very much. See you soon.